Hey students, how's everyone doing? I hope all of you are staying home and staying safe. A very warm welcome to this session, to the very first session of our geography subject. And we're going to start with the very first session, as I told you, of resources and development. Do tell me if you're excited about this session or not. If you are, don't forget to hit the like button because I know that you have been eagerly waiting for the geography subject to start, and here we are, and we're finally getting started. So without wasting any more time, let's get on the topic. So today we are going to discuss on resources, types of resources, development of resources, and of course in the end the most important one mark question. So don't miss that. Make sure you stay tuned till the end. So to begin with, and resources is a word I think which we have heard very often. But what does it mean? And I mean, like, if you're talking about it, what is it exactly supposed to be? So, but I'm sure you guys have heard resources so many times, and we do not just use it in terms of certain materials, but a lot of times we refer to people also as a resource, right? So, if we talk about the very literal meaning of the word resource, it basically means aid, okay? Something that aids us, something that helps us, something that facilitates us, that acts as of that adds on to help us to improve our functionality more effectively. So that is what resource means. But what do we mean it by resource in a geographical sense? So resources, bacha, is basically something, the you can say the aids provided to us by nature, but it's just not enough. I mean, like, just saying that okay, this particular thing is going to aid my life is not going to qualify it as a resource. So what are the things that actually makes anything a resource in terms of a natural resource is that it should be technologically accessible. Okay, it doesn't mean that okay, the resource is there but I cannot access it. Okay, I do not have access to that, then it's completely useless for me. It should be economically feasible, which means that extracting it, the amount of money I'm spending in it, is it economical or not? Let's say in order to extract it, I'm spending more money than I'm gaining out of it, then it's a loss for me. So it's not a profitable resource for me. So which means it's not really making my life more effective in an economical manner. I mean, like, instead it's actually depleting my economy. So I cannot call it a resource then. And of course, it has to be culturally acceptable, which means if I have a resource which people are not accepting, or it's not getting along with the culture, it's not mixing up, it's not becoming a part of the culture, then it's completely useless for me. So natural resource qualifies as a resource only when these three conditions are met. Only then we can say that it is helping us to function effectively and is adding on as a value to our lives. Okay, so now there's one thing very interesting. So as I was telling you that these are natural resources that we're talking about, and we tend to think that okay, resources are there and we are going to use it, but can you use it just like you attain it from the nature? You cannot, right? We cannot use anything that exists in the nature in the exact form. It needs to be reformed, and that's why we are saying that it should be economically feasible. That's why we are saying that it should be technologically accessible, right? So now this is a very interesting fact, okay, that we have to transform these materials into something that can be used by us. And this entire process has a very interesting interdependent relationship between every component. Now, what are these components? So, of course, it's the physical environment, which is the nature, right, from where we are extracting the resource. But at the same time, we have technology. Okay, technology is making it accessible to us. It's helping us to, access to it, transform it so that it becomes usable for us. And then are the institutions that we are setting up. Now, among all of these three components is the human being, because it's the human being who is discovering the resources, who's making it technologically accessible, and then using it, and also establishing these institutions. So all of these components have a very interesting interdependent relationship among each other, which means Even if you take out any one element out of these, the whole system is going to collapse. Nothing is going to work for us. So all of these are dependent on one another, and human being is the center of it. So that's how we can say that the transformation of materials from natural state is done to a state where it can be utilized by the people. And as I told you, that humans are the most essential component of resources. Why? Because it's the humans who are interacting with the resources. Resources are there in the nature, but then what? Is it enough? No. It's the human who interacts with the resources and then transforms it and uses it for economical development. Then these resources is going to help us in the development of economy. Okay, and how is all of this happening? So this is happening because we're using technology and institutions, which is, again, as I told you, established by the human beings, and that's why they're in the right center of it and they become the most important component. Why am I saying that the most important component? The another reason is that how do we have the resources? I mean, like, it's a nature's gift, right? We say that resources are the gift of nature to us. But is that enough? I think this is the second time that I'm telling you that it's not enough. Something that exists in the nature has to be transformed. And who is going to transform it? It's going to be a work of human. And that's what makes the humans the most essential component of this entire process. Okay, now let's see what are the different types of resources. I mean, there's so many resources, there's so many kinds of resources that's available out there. So we have to qualify, so we have to, you can say, categorize it. Okay, we have to kind of put it in different categories, and that brings us to the types of resources. So the resources can actually be qualified in the following segments, you can say, okay, the following types. And this is done on the basis of different qualities, you can say, or different reasons, different basis. Okay, so now it has been divided on the basis of origin, exhaustibility, ownership, and status of development. Let's look at each and understand what does each mean and what are the different types of resources. So the very first division that has been done is on the basis of origin, which means how have these resources been formed, or where are they found? Where do they originate from? On the basis of origin, we divide the resources into biotic and abiotic. Then comes exhaustibility, which means are they going to get exhausted? Are they everlasting, or do they have a lifeline which is going to end at a point? And on the basis of this, we have again divided the resources in two types, renewable and non-renewable. Then comes on the basis of ownership, which means these resources belong to whom? Who is going to claim the resources? And on the basis of that, it has been divided into four segments: individual, community, national, and international. And the fourth one, the last one, is on the basis of the status of development, which means how developed or underdeveloped the resource is, how accessible it is in terms of development. And on the basis of this, again, this has been divided into four segments further, which is called potential, developed, stock, and reserves. Now let's try and dwell into more depth of this and understand each and every segment in detail. Okay, so on the basis of origin, if I talk about resources, as I told you, have been divided into two, biotic and abiotic. Now this is the most simplest form of resource for us to understand. You can say on the basis of origin. What do you mean by bio? Bio का मतलब क्या होता है? What do we mean by bio? So bio is nothing else but anything that is related to life. Bio means life. So simple. Anything that has been, you can say, attained, has been taken from the biosphere or has life, such as human beings, flora, fauna, plants, animals, etc. Anything that is related to life qualifies as a biotic resource. So what will be abiotic resource? Exactly the opposite of it. Anything which is non-living, okay, which is not got to do anything with life, is known as abiotic resources. For example, rocks, metals, etc. Okay, then on the basis of exhaustibility, whether it is going to be everlasting or will it get exhausted. As I told you, it's going to be two divisions. The first one is renewable resources. Now the word in itself is self-explanatory. Renewable, something that can be renewed, something that is old and can be used again in a way. So it is basically obtained or reproduced, because it's a renewable thing, right? So it must have been used before and is being renewed again. So it is obtained or reproduced by chemical, physical or mechanical processes. Example, solar energy, wind energy, forest, etc. Then what are non-renewable resources? Obviously, which cannot be reused, or which cannot be renewed, which is limited in you can say existence. Okay, it's limited. And why is it limited, bacha? I mean, like, why am I saying that okay, it cannot happen again? If it has been formed once, it should be formed again. What's wrong with that? So the problem over here is, the catch over here is that these things take millions of years to get formed. These are geological, I mean, like, these are resources which in terms of geological time take a lot of time to be formed. And in order to renew it, it's going to take those millions years again to be formed, which means we have to be very wise when we are using it. Because if you're using something which is just taking 6 months to get over, but 60 years to be formed, you can imagine the ratio. It has to be proportionate, right? And that's why these are considered as non-renewable resources. For examples, minerals and fossil fuels. Now there's one thing interesting about this also. There are few non-renewable resources, the resources which are kind of limited but can be renewed. Okay, not exactly renewed, that's not the right term. That can be recycled, which means that can be reused. We can maybe reuse it by changing its forms, but that doesn't work with every resource. Okay, for example, metals. Okay, they are limited, they're available to us in a limited stock. However, they can be reused. We can recycle them and form something again with the same form of metal, with the same metal. But resources like fossil fuels cannot go under this recycle process, and they will end up getting exhausted. They will end up being over for us. So we have to be very careful with such kind of resources. Okay, then on the basis of ownership. Now what do we mean by this? So ownership means possession, right? Who possesses those resources? So on the basis of possession, on the basis of who owns it, it has been divided into four. Now it starts from the very basic of individual, very basic level of an individual, then community, then the nation, and then the world, international. Okay. So what do we mean by individual resources? As the name suggests, resources which are owned privately by an individual, by a sole person, okay, is known as individual resources. Now there are a lot of resources which a person owns, like you would own, like I own. For example, it could be plantation, farmland, pasture land, anything. Okay, such kind of natural resources which I have bought and now belongs to me as an individual. It's not shared by a group of people. Such kind of resources are known as individual resources. So similarly, when it is shared by a group of people, it becomes a resource that belongs to the community. It becomes a community owned resource. Okay. For example, gazing grounds, burial grounds, public parks, rivers. So these are, I mean, like, rivers is something that will be national, but maybe a small pond which belongs to a particular village. Okay, so it belongs to a particular community. So all of these things, when is accessible or belongs to a member of people, okay, a member of a particular group, is known as community owned resources. Then what are national resources? So this is very interesting. In a way, everything, be it individual, community, everything belongs to the nation only, right? No matter if I have this piece of land, I can never claim that it is going to be all for me, that I'm going to be a sole owner of this and nobody can take it away from me, because the nation can, right? So technically everything belongs to the national resources. Everything is a part of that. We're just calling it to be ours or of the community, but it can ultimately be taken by the nation whenever they want. For example, the Urban Development Authority, they have the authority, if they're building setting up, let's say, the roads, and you might have seen this, whenever the roads are being developed, or whenever a particular maybe metro is being developed and they want that area, they buy everything, every individual resource, the houses, the lands, everything that people have over there is being bought by the government. So technically that's why I said that everything belongs to the nation. But if not that, in general, what do we mean by national resources is the resources which is actually controlled by the nation or belongs to the nation. For example, canal, coal mines, railways, rivers, bigger water bodies, etc. Okay, and everyone knows that the nation has the legal power to take anything that belongs to an individual or the community. And this is very interesting. Now this is under the boundary of the nation, right? But how do we decide where exactly that border ends for me? Because sometimes two nations would be sharing boundaries. Then how is it decided? So every resource within the political boundary and oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles. So on land where the border has been designed. But what about water? I mean, like the water bodies go so far away, like the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea. I mean, it goes so far. Where do you exactly stop? I can say that Indian Ocean belongs to India, but it doesn't. Okay, so whenever it is about water in oceanic area, the extent of ownership of any nation goes up to 12 nautical miles, which is 22.2 kilometers from the coast, termed as territorial water and resources. Okay, they belong to the nation up to 22.2 kilometers, which is 12 nautical miles. Okay, then comes international resources. Now this, by the name itself, it's pretty self-explanatory that these are resources which are regulated or owned by international institutions, not by any particular nation, not by any community, not by any individual. Okay, for example, open sea, that is used for navigation, open sky, that is used for flight movement, etc. Now how do we decide what is the extent of this? So oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone belongs to the open ocean. All of that area goes under the international institutional control. Okay, and no country, no individual, no group of people or business company is allowed to use those resources without the concurrence, without the permission, without the permit of these international institutions. For example, in Indian Ocean, in order to mine these manganese nodules, India has permission to be there in the open sea. Maybe you can find out what else and where else does this happen, right? Okay, coming to the final type of basis of status of development of resources, which means resources that are qualified, that are segmented into this final type, which is on the basis of its development, its state of development, how developed it is. So the very first type that we talk about under this is potential resource. Now, what do you mean by potential? Anything that carries the credibility, right? The capacity. So potential resources are basically resources that are found somewhere which can be used, however, has not been used yet. Okay, you will find all of this in enough amount, in abundance, but it has still not been used, has not been developed properly. It doesn't mean that it cannot be used, it's just that it has not been developed properly, or maybe its uses have not been identified as such, and that's why it's a potential resource but is not being used into full capacity yet. For example, the wind energy in Gujarat and Rajasthan, solar and wind energy over there, we know what are its uses, we know that it can create a revolution or a radical change, but we're still not using it because we're exploring how can we do it best. It's not properly developed. Then comes the developed resources, simple, which are properly surveyed, which are quantified, and which we know that can be utilized through the available technology to its full potential, to the fullest. For example, coal, petroleum, etc. Then comes stock. Now this is very interesting. Stock is actually resources which have the potential, okay, that can satisfy the human need, but we do not have enough technology, or we are not sure of the process to avail it properly, to avail it to its full capacity. Now you might get confused between stock and potential resources. You will be like, ma'am, what is the difference? I mean, like, it somewhere sounds like potential resources because we are saying that they can satisfy the human need, but we do not have technical knowledge that is required for it. I mean, like, we have not developed it. It kind of sounds like potential resources. So Bacha, let me quickly clarify for you that the stock doesn't mean, we do not have the means to access it at all. However, for potential resources, we do have the means, but we are just not using it because we are trying to figure it out to be developed properly. If need be, we can go and use it in whatever extent, but that's not an option with the stocks. Okay, for example, water is actually made up of two very rich resource of energy, which is hydrogen and oxygen, but we do not know how to use it in that purpose, right? These are highly combustible gases, like they can burn, they can catch fire immediately, which means that this can produce a lot of energy, and water is made up of these two gases, but we do not know how to use it in that capacity. Okay, but wind energy and solar energy, as I told you, we know how to use it. We're just trying to work on it to see how more developed the process of its uses can be. Then comes reserves. In a broad umbrella, if I put it, if I have to put it, I would put it under stocks only. So you can say it is like a part of the same group as that, or as is stock. It is like his stock's brother. Okay, reserves are like stock's brothers or sisters, siblings. They kind of belong to the same group or family. Now, what do I mean by this? So basically, specific stocks for which appropriate technological know-how is available but exploration has not started yet is known as reserves. Which means what? Stocks, I'm qualifying resources as stocks only when I do not have the proper technological resource to access it, to avail it. But it's not the case with reserves. We do have the know-how, we know the knowledge, we have the knowledge piece, we know how to access it. But we have not full-fledgedly start doing it yet, and that's why we are still keeping it under stocks. For example, river water for hydel energy. We know that the water in the rivers and the dams can produce can be used to produce electricity, hydroelectricity, right? But using that hydel energy has still not started. We are aware of it. We have the technology to do it, but because we are not doing it for whatever limitations, it is being qualified under as reserves and somewhere falls under the category of stocks. Then comes development of resources. Now, how are these resources being developed? So the very first thing that we need to understand is that resources is very essential for human survival. We cannot easily survive without resources. Can you imagine your life without coal, gas, water, air? Everything is a resource given to us by nature, right? It doesn't matter how we are using it. So it's very essential for human survival. But at the same time, it also helps us in maintaining our quality of life. We will not have a better life without these resources. If petrol is not there, vehicles will not be there, right? Petrol, fuel is not there, vehicles wouldn't be there. If water energy, let's say, is not there, electricity is not there, coal is not there, electricity will not be there. What kind of life will we have then? We will be no different than the people living in the Stone Age, because they did not know how to access these components. They did not know how to access these resources, and that's why their quality of life was very different and lower than what we have right now. So it's very important to understand and recognize and acknowledge and show gratitude to what resources is bringing to us humans. Okay, and how essential and important it is, and what I mean, like, to the limits that it is improving and making our lives easy, and how dependent we are on it. But there's one small problem, and actually it's not small anymore. People take it for granted. People take these natural resources for granted. We think that it's the gift of nature and we can exploit it as much as we want. And we end up overutilizing it, which is further leading to so many issues and problems in the world. The major one is depletion of the resources. Because we are overusing it, it is slowly decreasing, it's depleting the fuels and everything. We are not finding an alternative, and also because we are continuously using it. How much will you take from something? It has to stop at a point, because you're not giving it back, and it takes millions and millions of years to form it. So as I told you, as a result of this, there's a depletion of resources. Then of course we are exploiting these resources indiscriminately. There is no stopping to us, which is further leading to another issues. Excess of anything is bad, bacha. No matter what it is, if you continuously make its use in excess, it has to have a bad result. And the same thing is happening with the exploitation of resources, which we are doing indiscriminately. And these are leading to global ecological crisis, such as global warming, pollution. Land is getting, it's depleting. The quality of the land is depleting. Water pollution is happening. Air pollution is happening. So many global warming is happening. So many crises is taking place and is getting birth because of all of this, because of our greed as humans, because of us taking these resources as granted. Okay, and of course it is accumulation of resources in few hands, which means there are few people, because of their resourcefulness in terms of capital, have more access to these resources, and this as a result is creating a segmentation, a bifurcation in the society of rich and of poor. People who can easily access this access the resources and accumulate it, can have it, can hoard it, and then there are societies there are segments in the society which cannot. So that is another problem that this is leading to. Okay, therefore it is very important for us to plan it. Okay, it's very important for us to do a resource planning, because it is very essential for our survival, for our existence, for our sustainable existence, not just normal existence, which maybe can end after a certain period of time. If we have to sustain our existence, the resource planning is very essential. Why? Because it's also a component of sustainable development. If we have to develop in a sustainable manner, which in a manner that retains, okay, that sustains, we have to have we have to have sustainable existence as well. And how will this happen? This can only happen with a fair distribution of resources, which is very essential. Okay, it is very essential for the sustainable quality of life as well as global peace, right? Because we just saw that these are the problems that is being led to, because we are not planning well, because the resources are being taken for granted, right? So guys, with this we come to the end of today's session. In the next session we are going to talk about sustainable development, which we just spoke of so much, and how can we do this resource planning, and so more and so forth. Okay, so as I told you, I had a homework question for you in the end, and here it is. Resources which are surveyed and their quantity and quality have been determined for utilization are known as potential resource, stock, developed resources, or reserves. With this, we're done with the session, guys. If you like the session and you think that it's going to help you, don't forget to like the video, and also make sure that you subscribe the video, so that whenever we are coming with the next part of the text, you get the notification sabse pehle, okay, before everyone else. So make sure that you're subscribing to the channel. I will see you in the next session. Till then, take care of yourself, stay home, take care of your loved ones, guys. Bye bye, have a great day.